Some bridges deserve to be burned.
The phone slipped from Sierra's hand like her wedding ring had slipped from her conscience. I watched it tumble toward our hardwood floor, and in that split second before it clattered against the boards, I heard her whisper a name that wasn't mine. Derek. My wife of 8 years stood frozen in our kitchen doorway, her perfectly manicured fingers still curved as if holding the phone. The autumn rain hammered against our windows in Millbrook, Maine, creating a soundtrack that seemed oddly appropriate for the moment my marriage officially died. "Interesting name for your personal trainer," I said, not looking up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing the final contracts for selling my tech company. The buyout was supposed to happen next month, supposed to change everything for us, make us rich, make Sierra happy. Sierra Gardner, formerly Sierra Walsh, had always been stunning in that way that made other men forget their manners and their wives. At 34, she'd built a fitness influencer empire on Instagram with her perfect abs and motivational quotes about living your best life. Apparently, living her best life involved someone named Derek. "It's not what you think, Eli." Her voice had that practiced calm she used in her workout videos, the same tone she'd perfected for lying to her 40,000 followers about which supplements actually worked. "I think you just moaned another man's name while talking to your sister about Thanksgiving dinner plans." I finally looked up from my screen. "Unless Derek is bringing the cranberry sauce, we might have a problem." She bent to retrieve her phone, and I noticed how her yoga pants clung to curves that hadn't been available to me in months. "You're being ridiculous. Derek is just your trainer, right? The one who's been training you in positions I apparently don't know about." "Eli, stop!" Sierra's green eyes flashed with something between guilt and irritation. "You're being paranoid. Maybe if you paid half as much attention to your wife as you do to your precious computer code, you'd understand that I need someone who actually listens to me." I closed the laptop slowly, the way I'd learned to control my temper during 12 years of marriage counseling that had obviously been a waste of money. "I listened, Sierra. I heard you moan his name just now. I heard you cancel dinner with my parents last week because you had to work late at the gym. I heard you tell your sister that your husband doesn't appreciate you anymore." The rain intensified, turning our kitchen windows into abstract art. Sierra moved to the counter, her back to me, shoulders tense. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Maybe I wouldn't need Derek if my husband actually wanted me. Maybe your husband would want you more if his wife wasn't screwing her personal trainer." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Sierra spun around, her face flushed with anger or embarrassment. I couldn't tell which anymore. "How dare you accuse me of..." "Of what? Having an affair? Cheating on the man who's about to make you a millionaire?" I stood up, my 6-foot frame still impressive despite spending most of my days hunched over computers. Boxing twice a week at Murphy's gym had kept me in decent shape, though apparently not decent enough for my wife. "Tell me, Sierra, when exactly did Derek start training you? Before or after you started coming home smelling like someone else's cologne?" Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it instinctively, and I saw her face change. Soften. The same expression she used to get when I texted her during our early dating years. "That's him, isn't it?" Sierra's fingers tightened around the phone. "I'm going to the gym. We'll talk about this when you're being rational. We'll talk about it now." "No, Eli, we won't." She grabbed her keys from the counter and headed for the door. "Some of us have commitments to keep." The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the picture frames in our hallway. Wedding photos, vacation shots, images of a couple who used to laugh together. I stared at them for a long moment, then grabbed my own keys. If Sierra wanted to keep her commitment to Derek, she could do it without an audience. But that didn't mean she'd do it without a witness. Murphy's gym was a 15-minute drive through Millbrook's winding streets. I'd been a member there for 3 years back when Sierra and I used to work out together, before she decided she needed professional guidance and switched to elite fitness across town. The same gym where Derek Vance, former Marine, local hero, and apparently my wife's new favorite exercise equipment, had built his reputation training housewives and teaching self-defense classes. I parked across the street from Elite Fitness and waited. The October rain had turned the parking lot into a mirror, reflecting the gym's neon sign and the headlights of arriving cars. Sierra's white BMW pulled in at exactly 7:30, right on schedule. She sat in her car for a moment, checking her appearance in the rearview mirror, before stepping out in workout clothes that probably cost more than most people's car payments. Derek emerged from the gym's entrance, like he'd been watching for her. Even from a distance, I could see why Sierra might find him appealing. The guy looked like he'd been carved from granite by someone with a serious muscle fetish. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, the kind of confident stride that came from never having to wonder if you could handle whatever life threw at you. They embraced in the parking lot, not a friendly hug, not a professional greeting between trainer and client. The kind of embrace that involved hands wandering to places that weren't covered in any fitness manual I'd ever read. Well, crap, I muttered, watching my wife of 8 years melt into another man's arms like butter on hot toast. A tap on my passenger window nearly gave me a heart attack. Bree Morrison, Sierra's best friend and partner in whatever chaos they'd been brewing lately, stood in the rain wearing a grin that suggested she was enjoying this drama more than anyone had a right to. I rolled down the window. Bree, Eli Gardner, sitting in his car, watching his wife like some kind of private detective. She leaned against the doorframe, rain dripping from her short black hair. This is either really sad or really entertaining. I haven't decided which. Just out for a drive. Sure you are. Bree glanced toward the gym entrance where Sierra and Derek had disappeared. You know, most men would just ask their wives what's going on instead of playing spy games. Most wives wouldn't be playing hide the personal trainer. Bree's laugh was sharp and knowing. Oh, honey, if you think this is about hiding, you haven't been paying attention. Sierra's not exactly subtle when she wants something. And what does she want? Everything. Bree straightened up, rain soaking through her jacket. Sierra's always wanted everything, Eli. The question is what you're going to do about it. She walked away before I could respond, leaving me sitting in my car with rain drumming on the roof and my marriage dissolving like sugar in water. I waited another 20 minutes, but Sierra and Derek didn't reappear. Whatever kind of training session they were having, it wasn't the kind that required an audience. I drove home through empty streets, past houses where other couples were probably having normal conversations about normal things like mortgage payments and weekend plans, not sitting in parking lots, watching their spouses embrace other people like the world was ending, and they'd found their salvation in someone else's arms. Our house felt different when I walked in. Colder, like Sierra had taken something essential with her when she left. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my basement office, staring at the contracts that would make us wealthy beyond our current dreams. Funny how money was supposed to solve problems, not create them. But then again, maybe the problems had always been there, hiding under the surface like cracks in a foundation. Maybe Derek was just the earthquake that finally brought everything crashing down. My phone buzzed with a text from Sierra. Working late tonight, don't wait up. I typed back, say hi to Derek for me. The response came immediately. Go to heck, Eli. I finished my bourbon and opened my laptop. If Sierra wanted to play games, she'd picked the wrong opponent. I'd spent 15 years building technology solutions for problems that seemed impossible to solve. A cheating wife and her muscle-bound boyfriend were just another puzzle to figure out, and I'd always been very good at puzzles. The next morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn clarity that made everything seem sharper, including my anger. Sierra had come home sometime after midnight, slipping into our guest bedroom like a ghost haunting her own house. I'd listened to her shower, wondering if she was washing off evidence or guilt. Probably neither. I was drinking coffee and pretending to read emails when she appeared in the kitchen, dressed for another day of being Millbrook's fitness queen. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail that somehow managed to look both casual and perfect, a trick she'd mastered along with the art of lying with a straight face. We need to talk, she said, pouring herself coffee from the pot I'd made. I'm listening. Sierra sat across from me at our kitchen table, the same spot where we'd planned our wedding 8 years ago, where we'd discussed buying this house, where we'd had countless conversations about a future that apparently didn't include both of us. I want a divorce. I'd been expecting it, but hearing the words still felt like taking a punch to the solar plexus. Straight to the point. I appreciate that. Don't be sarcastic, Eli. This is hard enough. Hard for who, you or Derek? Her green eyes flashed. This isn't about Derek. Everything's about Derek now, Sierra. The question is whether you're planning to wait until after my company sells to file papers, or if you're in a hurry to start your new life. The company sale doesn't change anything. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Doesn't it? Funny timing, your sudden need for personal training, right when we're about to become millionaires. You think I'm with Derek for money? Sierra's voice rose. God, Eli, you really don't know me at all. I know you married a struggling programmer, and now you're leaving a successful entrepreneur. I know you've been distant for months, right up until the buyout got serious. I know you're screwing your personal trainer in his gym after hours. I took a sip of coffee, watching her face cycle through emotions like a slot machine. What I don't know is whether you planned this or if it just worked out conveniently. Sierra stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I plan to be happy, Eli. I plan to feel wanted and appreciated and alive. Derek makes me feel things you haven't made me feel in years. Like guilty? Like desired. The word hung between us like a challenge. Sierra had always been beautiful, but sitting there in our kitchen, admitting she'd found what she needed in another man's arms, she looked almost radiant. It was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. I'll call my lawyer today, she continued. We can do this amicably or we can do it the hard way. Your choice. My choice, I nodded slowly. That's interesting, considering you've already made all the important choices without consulting me. Eli, no, Sierra. You've said your piece. Now you can go explain to Derek how much richer he's about to become. She left without another word, and I sat in the kitchen listening to her BMW pull out of our driveway for what I suspected might be the last time. Then I called Miles Chen, my business partner, and the only person I trusted to help me navigate what was coming next. Miles arrived an hour later with coffee, donuts, and the kind of nervous energy that made him invaluable during crisis management. At 29, he was 7 years younger than me, but had the instincts of someone who'd been betrayed before. So she wants half of everything, he said, after I'd explained the situation. She wants half of a company that hasn't sold yet. But we'll sell. The contracts are solid, Eli. $30 million, and we've already passed due diligence. I stared out my office window at the maple tree in our backyard, its leaves turning the color of rusted copper. What if the company doesn't sell? What do you mean? I mean, what if something happens to delay the sale? What if the buyer gets cold feet? What if the technology doesn't work as advertised? Miles set down his coffee cup carefully. Eli, what are you thinking? I'm thinking my wife has been planning this for months. I'm thinking she's been playing a long game, and I've been playing checkers while she's been playing chess. I turned back to face him. I'm thinking it's time to change the rules. The technology works perfectly. The buyer isn't going to get cold feet. The contracts are ironclad. Contracts can be modified. Technology can develop problems. Buyers can be convinced that they're making a mistake. I opened my laptop and pulled up the project files. How long would it take to introduce a critical bug into the core system? Jesus, Eli, you're talking about sabotaging your own company. I'm talking about protecting my assets from someone who's been systematically planning to steal them. Miles was quiet for a long moment, staring at the screen. Finally, he sighed. 2 weeks, maybe 3. But if we do this, we need to be smart about it, and we need to be sure. I'm sure. Are you? Because once we start down this road, there's no going back. You'll be burning bridges with people who trusted you. I thought about Sierra in Derek's arms, about her radiant smile when she'd talked about feeling desired, about the way she'd planned this conversation like a business transaction. Some bridges deserve to be burned. That afternoon, I drove to Flanagan's Irish pub, the kind of place where Millbrook's secrets went to get drunk and tell stories. Marge Flanagan had been serving whiskey and gossip in equal measure for 30 years, and if anyone knew about Derek Vance's reputation with married women, it would be her. The pub was nearly empty at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, just a few regulars nursing beers and watching a baseball game on the mounted TV. Marge looked up when I walked in, her weathered face creasing into a knowing smile. Eli Gardner, don't usually see you in here during daylight hours. Don't usually have reason to drink during daylight hours. Ah, she poured me a bourbon without being asked. Heard Sierra's been spending time at Elite Fitness. Word travels fast in a small town. Faster when the story's interesting. Marge leaned against the bar, her gray eyes sharp despite her 60-plus years. Derek Vance has a reputation, you know. For training housewives? For training housewives right out of their marriages. Your Sierra's not the first, won't be the last. The bourbon burned going down, but not as much as the confirmation of what I'd already suspected. How many others? 3 that I know of, maybe more. Man's got a system from what I hear. Targets women with money, women with problems at home, makes them feel special, makes them feel strong, makes them feel like they deserve better than what they've got. And then, Marge shrugged, then he moves on to the next one, but not before the divorce settlements come through. I finished my bourbon and left a 20 on the bar. Thanks, Marge. Eli? She called after me as I headed for the door. Whatever you're planning, be smart about it. Derek Vance isn't just a pretty face. Man's got connections, got friends in places that matter. Don't underestimate him. I drove home through streets that seemed different now, like I was seeing my town through new eyes. Millbrook had always felt safe, predictable, a place where people knew each other, where marriages lasted and secrets stayed buried. But sitting in my driveway, looking at the house Sierra and I had bought together, I realized I'd been living in a fantasy. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Derek. We should talk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. About what? About making this easy for everyone. Where? Elite Fitness, tonight, 8 p.m. I deleted the conversation and went inside to change clothes. If Derek Vance wanted to talk, we'd talk. But it would be on my terms, not his. And I had a feeling he wasn't going to like what I had to say. Elite Fitness at 8 p.m. was a temple to vanity and self-improvement, all chrome and mirrors and motivational posters about pushing through pain. Derek had left the front door unlocked for me, and I found him in the main workout area. Casually doing bicep curls like this was a normal social call. He was bigger up close than he'd looked from across the parking lot. Not just tall, I had him by an inch or two, but built like someone who'd spent years turning his body into a tool. The kind of guy who'd never had to wonder if he could handle whatever walked through the door. Eli. He set down the weights and extended a hand. "Thanks for coming." I didn't shake it. "Let's skip the pleasantries, Derek. You're screwing my wife, and she wants a divorce. What exactly did you want to discuss?" His smile was the practiced expression of someone used to getting what he wanted through charm. "Sierra's a special woman. She deserves to be happy." "And you make her happy?" "I do. No hesitation, no false modesty. The question is whether you're going to make this difficult for her." I walked over to the weight rack, picking up a 40-pound dumbbell and testing its balance. Difficult how? Divorce can be messy, expensive, emotionally damaging. Derek moved closer, not quite threatening, but making sure I understood the physical dynamic between us. Sierra's been through enough unhappiness. She doesn't need her husband dragging things out, making demands, trying to punish her for finding something better. Something better? I nodded thoughtfully. Is that what you call yourself? I call myself someone who appreciates what he's got. And what you've got is my wife. What I've got is a woman who knows her worth. Derek's voice hardened slightly. Sierra told me about your little accusation yesterday. About money, about timing. You think she's with me because of your company sale? I set the dumbbell back on the rack and turned to face him. I think she's with you because you're convenient. I think you make her feel young and desired while I'm working 60-hour weeks to build something that will take care of both of us for the rest of our lives. I think she's planning to cash out and start over, and you're her exit strategy. You're wrong. Am I? How many other married women have you helped discover their worth, Derek? How many other unhappy wives have you trained right out of their marriages? His expression shifted, the charm sliding away to reveal something colder underneath. I help people become their best selves. If that threatens weak men who can't keep their women satisfied, that's not my problem. But it is your business model. My business model is fitness training. Your business model is predatory. You target unhappy wives, make them feel special, convince them they deserve better, then help them upgrade their lives. And their bank accounts. I stepped closer, close enough to smell his cologne, the same scent I'd been detecting on Sierra's clothes for weeks. The question is whether you actually care about them or if you just enjoy the lifestyle. Derek's hands clenched into fists. You don't know what you're talking about. I know Sierra's not your first married client who suddenly discovered she needed to leave her husband. I know you've got a reputation in this town. I know you're very good at making women feel like they're making their own choices when you're actually pulling the strings. Sierra makes her own choices. Does she, or does she make the choices you want her to make? I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. Tell me, Derek, what happens to your relationship with Sierra after her divorce settlement comes through? Do you stay interested in a woman who's no longer married to someone else? Or do you find a new project? The punch came faster than I expected, but not faster than I could handle. 3 years of boxing at Murphy's gym had taught me to read body language, and Derek telegraphed his intentions like a neon sign. I slipped the right cross and countered with a short left hook to his ribs, putting my weight behind it. Derek doubled over, gasping. You son of a witch. That's for sleeping with my wife. I backed away, hands up, ready for round 2. You want to try again, or are we done with the physical portion of this conversation? He straightened slowly, his face flushed with pain and embarrassment. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Because here's what's going to happen, Derek. You're going to break things off with Sierra. You're going to tell her you've realized this was a mistake, that you can't be responsible for destroying her marriage. You're going to be the noble ex-Marine who does the right thing. And if I don't, then I make your life very uncomfortable. I know people in this town, Derek. I know business owners who might not want to associate with someone who has a reputation for breaking up marriages. I know wives who might not feel safe training with someone who targets married women. I know reporters who might find your business practices newsworthy. Derek wiped the corner of his mouth. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a choice. End it with Sierra or I end it for you. I left him standing in his gym, surrounded by mirrors that reflected his humiliation from every angle. The drive home felt like a victory lap, but I knew it was just the opening move in a longer game. Sierra was waiting for me in the living room when I got home, pacing like a caged animal. She spun around when she heard me come in, her face tight with anger. Derek called me. He said you attacked him. Derek exaggerated. We had a conversation and he took a swing at me. I defended myself. You had no right. I had every right. He's sleeping with my wife in my town and he wanted to discuss terms for my surrender. I hung my keys on the hook by the door, the same hook where they'd hung for 8 years. I told him I wasn't surrendering. Sierra's eyes were bright with tears or fury. I couldn't tell which. You can't stop this, Eli. You can't threaten people and expect them to just disappear. I can try. Derek loves me. Derek loves the idea of you. Derek loves what you represent. A successful man's wife. A trophy he can take away from someone who has more than he does. Derek loves winning. You don't know him. I know men like him. I sat down on the couch we'd picked out together 3 years ago, back when we still made decisions as a team. I know predators who dress up their hunting as helping. I know manipulators who convince their victims that they're making their own choices. Sierra sat across from me, her posture rigid. Is that what you think I am? A victim? I think you're a woman who's been systematically convinced that your marriage is worthless by a man who makes a living destroying marriages. My marriage is worthless, Eli. It's been worthless for years. The words hit harder than Derek's punch had. Since when? Since you stopped seeing me as anything other than an accessory to your success. Since you started treating me like a business partner instead of a wife. Since you decided that building your company was more important than building our relationship. I stared at her, this woman I'd loved for over a decade, and realized I was looking at a stranger. So you found someone who makes you feel like a wife again? I found someone who makes me feel alive again. And the timing, right before the biggest payday of our lives? Sierra stood up abruptly. Not everything is about money, Eli. No, but divorce is, especially when there's $30 million at stake. I don't want your money. You just want half of it. She left the room without responding, and I heard her bedroom door slam. I sat in our living room, surrounded by the artifacts of our shared life, and wondered when everything had gone so wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from Miles. How did it go with Derek? I typed back, round 1 to us. Get ready for round 2? What's round 2? I looked around our house, at the wedding photos and vacation pictures and all the evidence of a life we'd built together, and made a decision that would change everything. Round 2 is when we get creative. The next morning brought news that Sierra had moved out. She'd taken her clothes, her laptop, and her collection of self-help books about finding your authentic self. She'd left behind our wedding album, her engagement ring, and a note that said simply, I'm staying at Derek's until I find my own place. I found the note on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker, held down by the ceramic mug I'd given her for our 5th anniversary. The mug read, World's Best Wife, in cheerful blue letters that now seemed like evidence of my own stupidity. Miles arrived at noon with Chinese food and a laptop full of bad ideas. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, he began, setting containers of lo mein and sweet and sour chicken on my kitchen table. About protecting your assets. Our assets, I corrected. You've got 20% of the company, remember? Right. Our assets. He opened his laptop and pulled up a series of technical documents. I've identified 3 critical vulnerabilities in the core system. If any of them were to surface during final testing, the buyer would demand a price reduction. Or walk away entirely, depending on how bad the problems appear to be. I studied the code on his screen, recognizing the elegant solutions we'd spent 2 years developing. The system was designed to streamline inventory management for retail chains, and it worked flawlessly. But Miles was right. There were places where a few strategic bugs could make it look like a disaster waiting to happen. How long to implement? 2 days, maybe 3 if we want to make it look natural. And to fix them after the divorce is finalized? 2 hours. I picked at my low mane, thinking about Sierra waking up in Derek's bed this morning, probably feeling liberated and righteous about her choices. Do it. Eli, are you sure about this? Once we start, I'm sure. I closed the laptop. Sierra wants to play games with my life. She can deal with the consequences. That afternoon, I drove to Flanagan's for what was becoming my regular intelligence gathering session. Marge was polishing glasses behind the bar, and the place was busy enough to provide cover for sensitive conversations. Back again, she observed, pouring my bourbon without being asked. Becoming a regular, I suppose. Nothing wrong with that. Man needs a place to think. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Heard Derek Vance had some trouble last night. Someone said he looked like he'd been in a fight. Accidents happen, especially to men who don't watch where they're stepping. Marge's smile was sharp. Also heard your wife moved out this morning. Word really does travel fast. Faster when the story's getting interesting. She refilled my glass. Derek's been telling people he's in love. Real love, not just his usual hunting. What do you think? I think Derek Vance has never been in love with anything but his own reflection. But your Sierra's different from his usual targets. How so? She's got her own money, her own following. She's not some desperate housewife looking for validation. She's a businesswoman making a business decision. The bourbon suddenly tasted bitter. Meaning maybe she's playing him the same way he usually plays other women. Maybe your wife is smarter than anyone gives her credit for. I left Flanagan's with more questions than answers, and a growing suspicion that I'd been underestimating Sierra from the beginning. She wasn't some naive victim who'd been seduced by a predator. She was a strategist who'd identified what she wanted and figured out how to get it. The realization should have made me angrier, but instead, it made me oddly proud. I'd married a woman smart enough to outmaneuver me, and I'd been too focused on my work to notice what she was planning. But if Sierra wanted to play chess, I'd show her what a real strategist could do. That evening, I called my lawyer, Thomas Quinlan, a man who'd built his reputation on being thorough, ruthless, and completely without sentiment about human relationships. Eli, he said when he picked up, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Sierra's attorney called this afternoon. What did they want? To discuss terms. They're proposing a 50-50 split of all marital assets, including your company. The company that hasn't sold yet. The company that's scheduled to sell next month for $30 million. They've done their homework, Eli. They know exactly what they're asking for. I stared out my office window at the maple tree in our backyard. Its leaves were falling now, carpeting the ground with the remnants of summer. What if the company doesn't sell? Then there's nothing to split. But why wouldn't it sell? The contracts are solid. Contracts can be broken. Technology can fail. Buyers can change their minds. There was a long pause. Eli, what aren't you telling me? I'm telling you that my wife has been planning this for months, maybe longer. I'm telling you that she's been systematically destroying our marriage while positioning herself to cash out at the optimal moment. I'm telling you that I'm not going to let her profit from betraying me. What exactly are you planning? I'm planning to protect my interests using every legal means available. Another pause. Legal means? Completely legal. Morally questionable, perhaps, but entirely within the bounds of the law. I don't want to know the details. Then don't ask for them. After I hung up with Quinlan, I called the buyer's representative, a venture capitalist named Jennifer Walsh who'd been enthusiastic about acquiring our technology. Eli, she said when she picked up, perfect timing. I was just reviewing the final documentation. Actually, Jennifer, that's why I'm calling. We've discovered some potential issues during our final internal testing. What kind of issues? Performance problems? Stability concerns? Nothing that can't be fixed, but we want to be completely transparent about what we're seeing. The enthusiasm in her voice dimmed noticeably. How serious are these problems? We're still evaluating them. I'll have a full report for you by the end of the week. Eli, you understand that we're scheduled to close next month. Any significant technical issues could impact our timeline. I understand completely. We'll work around the clock to resolve everything. Keep me posted. I hung up and opened Miles's laptop, staring at the code that would either save my marriage or destroy my company. Maybe both. My phone buzzed with a text from Sierra. We need to talk about the house. I typed back, what about it? I want to list it. We should split the equity. The house isn't going anywhere until the divorce is final. Eli, be reasonable. We both need to move on. I stared at her message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Sierra wanted to move on, wanted to liquidate our shared life and start fresh with Derek. She wanted to treat our marriage like a business transaction that had run its course. Fine. If she wanted to play business, I'd show her what a hostile takeover looked like. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was up against, and that meant learning more about Derek Vance's business practices. I opened my laptop and started researching. By the time I went to bed, I had a much clearer picture of the man who'd stolen my wife, and I had the beginning of a plan that would give Sierra exactly what she deserved. Nothing. 3 days later, Miles and I sat in my basement office watching our company's stock value plummet in real time. The critical vulnerabilities we'd introduced were performing exactly as designed, causing system crashes during stress testing and making our previously elegant code look like amateur hour. Jennifer Walsh called twice this morning, Miles reported, nervously adjusting his glasses. She wants a conference call this afternoon to discuss revised expectations. Let her sweat. The more concerned she gets, the better our position becomes. Our position for what? Eli, if we tank this sale completely, we're both broke. I've got student loans, a mortgage. Relax, we're not tanking anything permanently. We're creating leverage. My phone rang. Sierra's name appeared on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. She'd been calling every few hours since news of our technical difficulties had started circulating. Apparently, her lawyer was getting nervous about the asset split. The voicemail was predictably direct. Eli, I know what you're doing. Call me back. We can work this out without destroying everything we've built. I deleted the message and turned back to Miles. How long before we can make the problems disappear? 2 hours, like I said. But Eli, what if the buyer walks away completely? What if we've damaged our reputation so badly that no one else will touch us? Then we rebuild. But that's not going to happen because Jennifer Walsh knows good technology when she sees it. She's not going to walk away from a 2-year head start on her competitors because of some bugs that can be fixed. You hope. I know. That afternoon, I drove to Elite Fitness for a reconnaissance mission. Derek's gym was busier than I'd expected, filled with the usual mix of soccer moms and middle-aged men trying to recapture their youth. I watched through the front windows as Derek moved between clients, all charm and professional attention. Sierra was there, working out with the intensity that suggested she was channeling her frustration into physical exercise. She looked good. Better than good. She looked like a woman who'd found her purpose. I was about to leave when I spotted a familiar face. Rebecca Martinez, the wife of Tom Martinez, who owned 3 restaurants in town. Rebecca was working with Derek on some kind of stretching routine that seemed to require a lot of hands-on guidance. Interesting. I drove to Flanagan's, where Marge was holding court with her usual collection of afternoon regulars. The conversation died when I walked in, then resumed at a lower volume after I had taken my usual seat at the bar. You're becoming part of the furniture, Marge observed, pouring my bourbon. Comfortable furniture, I hope. Expensive furniture at the rate you're drinking. She leaned closer. Heard your company's having some troubles. Where did you hear that? Sierra was in here last night with Derek. She seemed upset about something business-related. Sierra doesn't come to Flanagan's. She does now. Apparently, Derek's a regular. Marge's expression was carefully neutral. They sat in the back booth, had what looked like a serious conversation about money. What kind of conversation? The kind where one person is asking questions and the other person is giving answers they don't like. Marge polished a glass thoughtfully. Your wife looked worried, Eli. Really worried. I finished my bourbon and left a 20 on the bar. Thanks, Marge. Eli? She called after me. Whatever you're doing, be careful. Worried people make desperate choices. I drove home through streets that seemed different every day, like the town was changing around me. Or maybe I was changing, and everything else was staying the same. My phone was ringing when I walked into the house. Jennifer Walsh, right on schedule. Eli, we need to talk. I'm listening. My technical team has reviewed your report. These aren't minor bugs. These are fundamental design flaws that could compromise the entire system. I told you we were being transparent about what we found. You told me you had some performance issues. You didn't tell me your code was unstable at the core level. I sat down at my kitchen table, looking at the empty chair where Sierra used to drink her morning coffee. The problems are fixable, Jennifer. We just need time to implement the solutions. How much time? 2 weeks, maybe 3. That pushes our launch back by months. My investors are not going to be happy about that. Your investors are going to be even less happy if you launch a product that crashes under normal usage conditions. There was a long pause. We need to discuss a revised purchase price. I'm listening. $15 million, half of the original offer, reflecting the additional development time and risk. I pretended to consider it. I'll need to discuss it with my partner. You have 24 hours, Eli. After that, we start looking at other options. She hung up, and I sat in my empty kitchen, surrounded by the silence of a house that had become a museum of my failed marriage. $15 million was still enough to make Sierra's divorce settlement substantial, but it was also enough to make her think twice about whether she was making the right choice. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Rebecca Martinez. We need to talk. I stared at the message, remembering Rebecca's hands-on training session with Derek. About what? About Derek Vance. About what he does to marriages? When and where? Flanagan's, 1 hour. I deleted the conversation and grabbed my keys. If Derek had been running his playbook on other women, it was time to compare notes. Rebecca Martinez was sitting in the back booth when I arrived at Flanagan's, nursing a glass of white wine and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. She was attractive in the way that successful men's wives often were, well-maintained, carefully dressed, radiating the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "Thank you for reaching out." Marge appeared with my bourbon, gave Rebecca a knowing look, and disappeared without comment. "I heard about you and Sierra," Rebecca began. "About Derek. And I wanted you to know that you're not crazy. Derek Vance is exactly what you think he is. Which is a predator, a manipulator, a man who makes a living destroying other people's marriages." Rebecca took a sip of wine, her hand trembling slightly. "He almost destroyed mine." Almost? 6 months ago, I started training with Derek. I was having problems with Tom. He was working all the time. We weren't communicating. I felt invisible. She laughed bitterly. The usual middle-aged marriage complaints. "And Derek helped you feel visible again. Derek made me feel like the most important woman in the world. He listened to me, encouraged me, made me believe that I deserved better than what I had." "What stopped you?" Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, staring into her wine. "I saw him with another woman. Same routine, same lines, same promises. I realized I wasn't special. I was just next in line." "Did you tell your husband?" "I told Tom everything. We went to counseling, worked things out, but Derek didn't just disappear quietly." "What do you mean?" "He started spreading rumors about Tom's restaurants. Health code violations, tax problems, employee complaints. All lies, but they hurt our business." I leaned forward. "He retaliated. Derek Vance doesn't like to lose. When women walk away from him, he makes sure they regret it." "What happened?" "Tom hired a private investigator. We found out Derek had been doing this for years, targeting married women, breaking up their marriages, then destroying anyone who crossed him." Rebecca finished her wine. "The investigator found 3 other women with similar stories." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Sierra's different. She's not some lonely housewife looking for validation. She's smart, she's successful, and she thinks she can handle Derek." Rebecca met my eyes. "But nobody can handle Derek Vance. He's going to destroy her, and he's going to enjoy doing it." I walked out of Flanagan's with my phone already in my hand, calling the private investigator Rebecca had recommended. If Derek Vance wanted to play games with people's lives, it was time to change the rules. And I was very good at changing rules. The private investigator's report arrived 3 days later in a manila envelope that contained enough ammunition to end Derek Vance's career and possibly his freedom. Marcus Webb had been thorough, documenting a pattern of behavior that went far beyond simple adultery. Derek hadn't just been seducing married women, He'd been systematically targeting wives of successful men, gathering information about their finances, their businesses, their vulnerabilities. Then, he'd use that information like a tool of manipulation, either to extract money directly or to destroy anyone who crossed him. The report included financial records showing Derek's gym was failing, kept afloat only by consulting fees and training packages, paid by women whose husbands never knew about the charges. It included photographs of Derek with at least 6 different married women over the past 2 years. And it included recorded conversations where Derek bragged about his business model to other men at local bars. Sierra wasn't his girlfriend, she was his retirement plan. I called Miles and had him come over to review the evidence. He arrived looking nervous, the way he always did when we were about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "This is bad, Eli, really bad. Bad for Derek. Bad for Sierra, too. If this comes out, it'll destroy her reputation, her business, everything she's built." I spread the photographs across my kitchen table, images of my wife with a man who'd been systematically deceiving her while she'd been systematically deceiving me. Sierra made her choice. She can live with the consequences. What are you going to do? I'm going to give her a chance to make a different choice. That evening, I called Sierra and asked her to meet me at the house. She arrived an hour later, looking wary but determined. Derek wasn't with her, which suggested she still had some sense of boundaries. "You look good," I said, and meant it. Whatever else Derek had done, he'd helped Sierra rediscover her confidence. "Thank you." She sat across from me in our living room, the same spot where she'd asked for a divorce a week ago. "Tom said you wanted to discuss terms. I want to discuss Derek." Her expression hardened. "There's nothing to discuss. There's everything to discuss." I opened the manila envelope and spread its contents across our coffee table, starting with what Derek Vance really does for a living. Sierra stared at the photographs, the financial records, the investigator's report. I watched her face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally, a dawning understanding that made her look physically ill. "This is fake," she said finally. "You hired someone to fabricate evidence." "The evidence is real, Sierra. Derek's been running this scam for years. You're just his latest target." "He loves me. He loves your money. He loves the idea of taking $30 million away from me. He loves winning." I pointed to one of the photographs showing Derek with another woman. "This was taken 3 weeks ago while you were falling in love with him." Sierra picked up the photograph, studying it with the intensity of someone trying to find proof that her world wasn't collapsing. "Who is she?" "Jennifer Walsh, the woman who's buying my company." The photograph showed Derek and Jennifer in what appeared to be an intimate conversation at an upscale restaurant. They were leaning close together, her hand on his arm, both of them smiling like they shared a secret. "I don't understand." "Derek's been feeding Jennifer information about our technical problems, information he could only have gotten from you." I pulled out another document, a series of text messages between Derek and Jennifer discussing our company's vulnerabilities. "He's been playing both sides, Sierra, using you to get inside information, then selling that information to the buyer to drive down our purchase price." Sierra read the messages, her face growing paler with each line. "How did you get these?" "The same way I got everything else, by hiring professionals to investigate the man who's been destroying our marriage." She set the documents down carefully, like they might explode if handled roughly. "What do you want, Eli?" "I want you to understand what you're really choosing. Derek Vance isn't your salvation. He's your destruction. He's going to take everything you have, everything you've built, and then he's going to move on to the next target. And if I believe you, if I accept that Derek is everything you say he is, what then? Then you come home. We cancel the divorce, work on our marriage, and split the company proceeds the way we originally planned." Sierra laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Just like that? Pretend none of this happened?" "Not pretend. Learn from it. Figure out what went wrong and fix it. What went wrong is that we stopped being married and started being business partners. What went wrong is that you stopped seeing me as a woman and started seeing me as an asset." Sierra stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked our backyard. "Derek may be everything you say he is, but at least he made me feel alive." "He made you feel like a mark." "Maybe, but that's still more than you made me feel." The words hit like physical blows, each one finding its target with surgical precision. Sierra was right. I had stopped seeing her as a woman, had started taking her for granted, had prioritized building our future over enjoying our present. Sierra, no, Eli. You don't get to destroy my relationship with Derek and then expect me to come running back to you. She turned from the window, her eyes bright with tears or anger. You want to know what the real problem is? The real problem is that you're more interested in winning than you are in being married. That's not true, isn't it? You've sabotaged your own company to keep me from getting half the proceeds. You've hired private investigators to destroy the man I love. You've turned our divorce into a war because you can't stand the idea of losing. She was right about everything except one crucial detail. Derek doesn't love you, Sierra. Derek is incapable of loving anyone but himself. Maybe, but at least he's honest about what he wants. What does he want? Everything. Money, success, power, beautiful women. He doesn't pretend to want anything else. And that's what you want? A man who sees you as a trophy? Sierra gathered up the photographs and documents, stacking them neatly on the coffee table. I want a man who wants me. Derek may be using me, but at least he's passionate about it. You couldn't even be bothered to use me properly. She left without another word, taking her accusations with her and leaving me alone in our house with the evidence of my wife's betrayal and my own failures. I poured myself a bourbon and called Miles. How did it go? He asked. She chose Derek. Even after seeing the evidence? Especially after seeing the evidence. She'd rather be with a man who's passionate about using her than a man who's indifferent about loving her. Miles was quiet for a long moment. So what now? I looked around our living room, at the wedding photos and vacation pictures, and all the artifacts of a marriage that had died so slowly I hadn't noticed it was happening. Now we finish what we started. The company sale? Everything. The next morning I called Jennifer Walsh and accepted her revised offer of $15 million. Then I called my lawyer and told him to finalize the divorce proceedings. Then I called Marcus Webb and told him to release his report to every media outlet in Maine. If Sierra wanted Derek Vance, she could have him. But she'd have him exactly as he was, a predator whose hunting ground had just been burned to the ground. And I'd have my freedom, my company, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes winning and losing were the same thing.